Functions are actually my favorite. I find them very interesting, and for you to understand them, you have to know the basics. That is very, very important. What we have here is the function of x, which is equal to x squared minus 3x minus 4. Obviously, the highest exponent here is actually 2. And if the highest exponent is 2, it simply means that we are going to have a quadratic function, and the graph of a quadratic function is called a parabola. All right. Now, with this quadratic function we are given here, which is always in this form, where we have the function of x, which can also be y, is equals to ax squared plus bx plus c, where if A is positive, your graph will phase up. If A is negative, your graph will phase down. So this is if A is negative. If A is positive, it'll open up. All right. That's why here, because A is positive 1, our graph is opening up. We say it's concave up. And we are given A and B, and we are told that those are our x-intercepts. So they are x-intercepts of that function. What does that mean? That's why, guys, it's very, very important to understand what you're doing. Don't just memorize. Understand what you are doing. When they talk about x-intercepts, they are talking about the points where the graph touches the x-axis. This line here is referred to as the x-axis, okay? This is the x-axis, and that will be the y-axis, all right? On your x-axis, what you need to know is that y on that line is equal to 0, meaning that on that line, f of x is actually equal to 0. So y will be positive as you go up, 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 okay? And y will be negative as you go down, 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 down. But on that line, y is equal to 0. That's what you need to understand about the x-intercepts. So we need to find those points. And what I already know here is that obviously, the y-coordinate of A will be 0, and the y-coordinate of B will also be equal to 0, because on that line, y is equal to 0. At the same time, I know whatever x value I have for A, it will be negative because it's on the left-hand side of your y-axis. X values on the left-hand side of your y-axis will be negative, and x values on the right-hand side of your y-axis will be positive. Is it clear? And then they tell us that D is a turning point. What we know about the turning point is that it's when you draw a gradient on your turning point. So this will be the gradient here. It'll just be a horizontal line. Now, since it'll be a horizontal line, it means that when you find the first derivative or the gradient of that line, it'll just be equal to 0. Remember, the first derivative tells you about a gradient of the tangent. So because that becomes a tangent, change in y all over change in x, it'll actually result, obviously x will not be equal to 0. Okay, so x will not be equal to 0. However, change in y will actually be equal to 0, and that is because at that point your y values will be the same. Whatever the y coordinate of d is, your y values there will be the same. It'll just be a straight line, a horizontal line, and that is why we say the first derivative at that point is equal to 0. However, how can I find this actually? To find the value of d, you have so many options, all right? The first option is to, so the x coordinate of d will be the midpoint of the x coordinate of a when you add it with the x coordinate of b and you divide it by 0. They will give you the x coordinate of d, of which you can just substitute into the original equation to find the y coordinate. Another way for finding the x-coordinate of D is by using a formula. Which formula am I talking about here? I hope you know this formula where they will tell you that the x-coordinate of the turning point will be equal to minus b divided by 2a. That is the second way of finding the x coordinate of d. If you don't want to use this formula, you can just find the first derivative, of which I find to be easy. Even the midpoint one is easy. You find the first derivative and then you equate it to 0. You solve for x, and whatever value of x you get will be the x coordinate of the turning point. And to get the y coordinate, whatever x coordinate you get here, you just substitute it into the original equation. Let us answer number one. Number one wants us to find the coordinates of A and B. Note that, guys, here we're just dealing with functions. So if you can't factorize, just use the quadratic formula to find your values of x, all right? Um, to make your life easy. Factorizing just makes it a bit quicker because you don't have to go to your calculator and figure things out. But if you can't and you struggle with factorizing, to find the values of whatever root you are trying to solve, go ahead and use the quadratic formula, okay? Now, what we have is this function here. We agree that from our discussion here, we agree that A and B are the x-intercepts. So we're going to take the original. Whatever question you answer, guys, always use the original function that you're given. Excuse me. So the original function we have is this one here, that f of x is equals to x squared minus 3x minus 4, right? But we know that A and B are the x-intercepts. What we are going to do is to take this f of x, which is y, and just equate it to 0. So you will take that f of x and just equate it to 0. Okay, so where there's f of x, I'm going to substitute 0. I will end up having this equation here. And for me to find my x values, I will need to factorize. All right, since I have 0 on the left-hand side, I can just factorize in order for me to find the values of x. Since this is a quadratic equation, the factors of x squared will be x and x, and the factors of 4, that can give me a middle term of 3. When I subtract them, will actually be 4 and 1. 4 times 1 will give me 4, but 4 minus 1 will give me the middle term, which is 3. So the bigger number between 4 and 1 will take the sign of the middle term, which is negative. So the second bracket will take negative, and because the last term is negative, the other bracket has to take the opposite sign, which will be positive. I discussed this in the first video where I said when you have two factors, which is A, when you multiply it with B and the product is 0, then A will be 0 and B will be 0, because one of them has to be equal to 0, or both of them can be equal to 0. So what I'm going to do is to take this x plus 1, which is the first factor, equated to 0, or and x minus 4 will give me 0. Now, these are linear equations. It's easy to solve. So if you want to solve for x in the first linear equation, you just transpose that -1 to the right-hand side. It'll become, positive 1, it'll become negative. And for the second equation, you will transpose -4 to the right-hand side. It'll become positive 4. Now, between these two, which one is the x-coordinate of A and which one is the x-coordinate of B? Going back, you'll realize that the coordinate A is on the left-hand side of your y-axis. So we can say that the first x value will be the x-coordinate of A, meaning that the second x value will be the x-coordinate of B. Now, to write them as coordinates, you will write this. Coordinate is a position which says that A, the x value will be at -1 and the y value will be at 0. I think I have explained as to why that is the case. So what I'm going to have here is that the coordinate, which is just a direction, the coordinate of A will be 1 unit to the left of your y-axis, and it will be in the middle horizontally, which will be 0. And for B, my x-coordinate will be on the right side of my y-axis, and horizontally it will be on line 0 because it was on the x-axis, and on the x-axis y is equal to 0. Okay, number 1 answered. Right? Was it good? Did you enjoy it? Was it easy? Please don't forget to share, subscribe, let your friends know about this cool channel. The more you support, the more videos I will make. Normally, you're told that IEB and GDE are different. To me, guys, they're pretty much the same. I've taught in both systems. They are actually the same. Maths is maths, accounting is accounting. All right. This is maths and accounting. This channel is for maths and accounting. If you would like me to record or explain any activity, please don't be afraid to contact me. Otherwise, you can find me at 85 Maths. For now, Khotsom. See you soon. It has been a second. Welcome back. For number 2, they want us to determine the coordinates of D. And we agreed that D is a turning point. It's up to you as to which one you use. I feel like using the midpoint of your x-intercepts, these ones here, will actually be easier, because now to find the x-coordinate of D, you can say the x-coordinate of D will be equal to -1 plus 4, and then you just divide this by 2, which will give you 3/2. Now, if you don't want to use this, you can say that the x-coordinate of D will be equal to -b. This one will want me to go back to the equation. And oh, I wrote it here, right? So what we know is that this over here will be our b, which is -3, right? So we are simply going to take that -3 and divide it by a. A there, 2a. A there will be 1. Okay. Now getting back to this, to use the formula, so it was -b. So where there's b, I'll put in -3 and then divide it by 2. Where there's a, substitute 1, and this will give me 3 over 2. Right? So this is the second method you can use. Now, or you can use the method that I prefer. All I did with this method, the reason I prefer this method is because you will use it again. So you don't have to relearn or learn a lot of things. So what you're going to do here is just to find the first derivative using your derivative rules, which will give you 2x minus 3. And then we know that when you have a turning point, the first derivative is equals to 0. So where there is f of x right here, you will just substitute 0, all right? So you will have 0 is equals to 2x minus 3, and then you just solve for x. So x here will be 2x. Transpose 3 to the other side. It was negative. It will be positive when you move it to the left-hand side, and then you divide both sides by 2. You end up having x is equals to 3 over 2. So you can use whichever method you prefer. I know someone is like, yeah, the first one, finding the midpoint, is easy. It's easy because the first question wanted you to find the x-intercept, but it's not easy if that question was not there. So the second formula, it's easy if you remember the formula, but you better not mix things up. You better know what b is. And the sign of b, you must be careful not to substitute the wrong sign. And then the other one, obviously, you just need to know what you are doing, okay? Once you get these x values, you're going to go back to the original equation, which I wrote above there, right at the top. So you're going to go to the original equation. Wherever there is x, you will substitute that 3 over 2. It will give you the y coordinate of d. You go to the original equation, and wherever there is x, you substitute the x coordinate of the turning point. Okay. You can use your calculator. Okay, let me use the calculator because I don't want to confuse you. It is the easier way, all right? I feel like it's a waste of time in situations like this, but for content purposes, I'll just show it to you. So it'll be 3 over 2, okay, and then you close the bracket, then you raise that to the exponent of 2, and then you have minus 3, open bracket, you have 3, divide that by 2, and then you close the bracket, and then you minus 4. Equals sign, it gives you the y coordinate, and here the y coordinate will be -25 over 4, -25 over 4. So this will be the y coordinate of D. So to write the coordinates of D, x will be 3 over 2, and y will be -25 over 4. And there we go. And this should make sense, okay? For D, when you look at your graph, D is on the right side of your x-axis. So it makes sense that the x must be positive. And that x must be greater than the x-coordinate of A, but it must be less than the x-coordinate of B. But at the same time, D is below the the x-axis, meaning that the y-coordinate below the x-axis will be negative. And what you have here will be d is equals to negative 25, which makes sense. It's supposed to be negative. And I need you to understand that because your graph is concave up or it's facing up, the y coordinate of d also represents the minimum value of the function, okay? So if you were to write the range, it'll start from the minimum value of this negative 25 over 4, and then it'll go up to infinity. As you can tell that the minimum y will be this negative 25 over 4, and then it'll keep on going up. Whether it's this side or that side, y keeps on going up, 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 up. Easy, hey? I know. All right. All right, that'll be for number 2. I'm actually enjoying this. Math is fun, I must say. So, okay, here it says for which values will the gradient of f be negative? Understand that the gradient, it's just the first derivative, and then you just make sure it's less than 0 and you solve for x, okay? So it'll be for any values that you find there. But anyway, let me just keep this for the next video. I'm tempted to do it now because it's just 1 mark, but let me just be consistent. I will do this in the next video. All right. See you in a second.